few weeks ago, Ajay gave a sermon, and we all had a discussion on HJ culture and arts, or Hyojong culture. It was very interesting. If you remember, True Mother introduced a new word to replace the original word for filial piety. It was Hyojong. And we were discussing this, and some interesting questions came up. And also, for a while, I'd been thinking about pledge number 7, culture of heart, and thought, yeah, that would be good for a sermon. But I didn't really get round to doing anything until this subject came along, and I thought, this is what I need to talk about. So, as we read just at the start of the sermon, we did pledge number 7, so I'll read that now. Our family, the owner of Chonolguk, pledges through living for the sake of others to perfect the world based on the culture of heart, which is rooted in the original lineage by centering on true love. So just to state the obvious, it is through living for the sake of others that we perfect a world based on the culture of heart, and that culture of heart is rooted in the original lineage. So for unificationists then, it is important for us to understand what culture of heart means. And we should also ask the question, well, what is the relationship between culture of heart and Hyojong culture? Is it the same thing? Like I say, certain discussion points came up, which I think were good questions. So the first question was, do we need another new word? Simon Cooper asked this question. And isn't it confusing just to have another foreign word for us to hear? Certainly confusing for guests. It is confusing for us. You know, we don't really know what it means. I missed the original announcements when this first started happening, and suddenly everything from Korea had HJ in front of it. And I thought, what's HJ? And I kind of did a bit of research, and I found out it meant Hyojong. And well, what does Hyojong mean? You know, we've got HJ Global News, we've got HJ Heaven and Earth Chombo Training Center. It's all a bit, well, confusing, isn't it? For some reason, True Mother felt that the original Korean, Hyoheng, was not, you know, meaning filial piety, didn't express the concept well enough, even for Koreans. So for some reason, she wanted to make that change. And True Father often said we should be learning Korean so we can understand him better. And at least we should try and understand the major concepts of Korea. Of course, we do have to be careful how we use our words when we're talking to people that don't know us very well and we start using strange foreign words. Yes, we have to be careful. Anyway, here's a picture that I nicked from Ajay's slides. And part of the discussion, you know, the title of the sermon was Hyojong Culture and the Arts. Well, what do we mean by culture anyway? We actually talk about culture in 2 different ways. This is a dictionary definition. The arts, culture is the arts and other manifestations of human intellectual achievement regarded collectively. And also the ideas, customs, and social behavior of a particular people or society. So arts, sometimes we say the word culture and everybody thinks the arts. You know, opera. You know, maybe the first thing some people think of is opera. It's not for me. I don't particularly like opera on the whole. Sorry, Barbara. Barbara loves opera. I thought of Barbara when I was writing this. Perhaps arts is the pinnacle of culture. It certainly is an expression of culture. The arts is a way you express the culture. Certainly, you can't grab hold of a creative person. We got creative people here in the church, and we say, okay, right now, you've got to start writing Hyojong songs. and we've got to express Hyojung culture. And the first they're going to say is, well, what do you mean by Hyojung? And Kenneth asked the question, well, aren't we doing this already? We're already doing this. What are you talking about, Aja? And to be fair, Aja's title of the sermon was, What is our expression of Hyojung? What is our expression of it? Vanya made the point, which I applauded, and I thought, great, well done, Vanya. She said, I don't sing, I don't dance, I don't write poetry, but I can live a Hyojung life. And I totally agreed with that and thought, that's absolutely right. I got a bit frustrated because the discussion kept on talking about the arts. And I think Clive said something about, Hyojung is more than just the arts. And then I remembered this quote from Father. Henceforth, only art will remain. People who cannot write love poems are failures. Well, I don't write them very often, Paul, that's the problem. So it's wonderfully controversial, and it seems a bit harsh, and you may be wondering, what on earth can I do about that? I've never written a poem in my life, I don't even feel like it, you might be thinking. Anyway, I'll come back to what I think Father means by that later. Okay, so where are we? We've got to understand what Hyojung is, and Hyojung culture. We've just had a look at culture, the meaning of culture and art, and how art is an expression of culture. And on top of that, we've got to understand how to fit in this quote from Father, that in the end, from now on, it's only art, nothing else but art. Okay. The original Korean, Hyoheng, means filial piety in English. And if you look up filial piety, you always get something like this. I was a bit surprised, but you look it up and it says, filial piety is a Confucian concept derived from Chinese culture, which advocates a set of moral norms, values, and practices of respect and caring for one's parents. So it seems, from the dictionary point of view, we didn't have the concept in the West or in English for filial piety. We get it from the Chinese Confucianism. We don't really agree with that, do we? But we don't. But but that is the dictionary definition of filial piety. You know, of course, we do have a natural respect for our parents and elders. Do you know? Remember the Spartans in ancient Greece? The Spartans had an expression: when you see a chair, look for an old person to put in it. They were so trained for thinking of their elders. So, a chair. You don't think, oh, great, I can sit down. It's, oh, great, I can find an old person to stick in it. The fifth commandment is, in the Bible, honor your father and mother. Matthew 19, if you want to enter life, keep the commandments, honor your father and mother, and love your neighbor as yourself. But the way that filial piety is the core of Confucianism, and the way that Confucianism is the core of many Oriental countries, is very different to in the West. We haven't made filial piety a core of our belief in quite the same way. While we were developing our individuality and creating democracy, which we're very proud of, the Orient were focusing on filial piety. In China, it was the primary duty. In the West, especially in America, it's individualism has been the priority. So looking at the Chinese characters, this is in Korean, Hyoheng. In Japanese, it's Koko, Kuku, something like that, Koko. Chinese, Zhaojing, is that right? Zhaojing. Different areas have different pronunciations, don't they? But yeah, that's the Chinese. The first character, the top one, if you bung that into Google Translate, you get filial piety. If you bung both of them in, you get filial piety. So the top one is a combination of two characters. It's kind of old or elderly above, and a child below. It shows the hierarchy. And the second character, it modifies it into an action, a behavior, something to do, be capable of, and so on. I found an article by Dr. Thomas Sellover. He's president of the Sunhack Graduate University. I believe he's American. And I found an article by him called Heavenly Society and the Development of Hyojong Culture. It's a bit technical, but it's really well worth reading. And the next few slides are based on that article. And he looked at Confucian writings and Korean and Chinese professors, their understanding. And there is some criticism, modern day criticism of Hyo. That character, because of course it's been misused over the centuries. It's been misused, and it's been used to dominate. And people say, well, there's someone dominating. And in Confucianism, it's not an elder dominating. It's someone. It's a healthy son looking after a sick parent, carrying a sick parent on his back. That's the feeling that Confucianism tries to get across. Anyway, let's look at some of these quotations. So, in Analects is the book of Confucian writings. In Analects 1:2, it says, "Being filial as a child and deferential as a younger brother are surely the roots of human kindness." And the Neo-Confucian interpretation, "Filial piety and brotherly love are the beginning of practicing humanity." It's not simply an attitude or an emotion. It's natural. It's a natural feeling, not an duty or obligation. And by reflecting back on actual experiences of filial piety in action, it is possible to know oneself, the heart and mind of Hyo. So that's quite significant, that last paragraph. In Confucianism and in the Orient, people would they would know that Hyo is the core of Confucian thinking, so they think about Hyo. What does Hyo mean to me? How have I experienced Hyo? How can I manifest Hyo more fully? So in other words, it has taken on religious significance. That concept has taken on religious significance. Have you heard the expression, charity begins at home? What does it mean? That's what a lot of people think. And you look it up all over the internet. It says, look after your home before you look after somebody else. But it's not true. Charity is a Christian concept. It's love in action. Love in action. You're doing something. That's what charity. That's why we have the word charity to give. Charity begins at home means that the starting point of charity is in the home. Charity starts there. We learn what charity is. We learn how to love at home. In other words, the family is the school of love. That's what that expression means. But almost everyone has forgotten that concept. It's really hard to find when you're Googling anyone that says the description I just gave. So we've had the concept in the West, but to some degree we've lost it. We've lost it over the years. At the same time, in the Orient, the Hyo has been misused. It's become something which people, I want my freedom too. They look at the West and they say, look at the freedom the West has. I want some of that freedom myself. And Hyo maybe has, filial piety has taken on a bit of a dirty word, perhaps, in the Orient. So perhaps that is why, or one reason why, Mother introduced Hyojong. Again, we have the filial piety above, but down below we have Jong. which can mean emotion, it can mean feeling, but it can mean so much more. According to Thomas Sellover, Jong is much more difficult to define. And he says there's even subtle differences between Chinese, Japanese, and Korean understandings of that word. And he quoted from two Korean American professors who wrote an article called Significance of Jong in Korean Culture and Psychotherapy. One English, and this is quoting from them, one Korean English dictionary defines it as feeling, love, sentiment, passion, human nature, sympathy, heart. Although it is complicated to introduce a clear definition of Jong, it seems to include all of the above, as well as more basic feelings such as attachment, bond, affection. One of the important characteristics is location. Jong seems to be located not only inside our hearts, but also outside. In other words, the location of Jong is between individuals. Put simply, Jong is the warm feeling of attachment felt between people who share a close relationship. Jong can be described as intimate and warm. Jong can be described as intimate and warm feelings arising from one's relationship with another person and the desire to do something for them. So many times I've spoken about, or several times I've spoken about the difference between selfish and selfless, and self-centered and other-centered. When you talk about selfish and selfless, it's easy to get confused over what selfless means. And we can feel that selfless means, oh, I shouldn't feel anything. I should just do good things for other people, and regardless of how I feel. Or even I should be a zero, I should feel nothing. But if you think self-centered or other-centered, the center of myself is there. The center of myself is not here. The center of me is over there somewhere, in you or between you and me. So I get my joy from your joy. When a mother looks at a child, the mother hasn't become selfless as such, she's become other-centered. She's thinking of the other, and that fills herself. Yes, you can say that is being selfless, but I think it's a confusion, and people, certainly in Christianity, people have got very confused over the concept of selfless. I found a blog called Knowing Korea, and in that blog there was a video of an American, a Korean American. He grew up in America, but he had Korean parents, I think. Anyway, he was about 6 foot. He was a basketball player, 6 foot, 10, or really tall guy. Anyway, he'd been living in Korea for 10 years playing basketball, and he got his friend over. And in the video, he was walking around the market, showing his friend the market. And what he wanted his friend to do was to feel the Korean heart. And afterwards, he said to his friend, how did you find that? He said, every stall I went to, I felt like I was being welcomed by my family. And they asked one of the women who served, one of the elderly ladies that was working, selling fruit or vegetables or something, why did you give me so much food? She said, well, because you're away from your mother, and I felt sorry for you. Even though he was a grown man. And I remembered Bruce Brown gave his testimony, and Bruce Brown was in the army in Korea, in Seoul, in the 60s, time of the Vietnam War. And Father said to Bruce Brown, do you understand the heart of Korea? He said, no, Father. He said, go and walk around the markets until you understand the heart of Koreans. And after several weeks of doing that, Father said, do you understand the heart of Koreans? He goes, I'm starting to, Father, I'm starting to. And he said that your trouble is that you think with your head and feel with your heart. You have to feel with your head and think with your heart. And Bruce said, I still don't know what he meant. So Jong is something very deep. Here's some more from those same two guys. The earliest time an individual is exposed to the experience of Jong is when a baby is held and carried by his or her mother. As the mother's warmth permeates to and is felt by the baby, so too the Jong permeates to the heart of the baby. This type of Jong is called Mojong, which exists during the remainder of the person's life. This total trust of life and person without logic or reason starts up from the earliest experience of life. As a child grows older, the Jong experience will expand to include interactions between him, her, and the father, friends, and other relatives, neighbors, and members of the community. So it's not that we don't have these experiences. When we read that, we know exactly what they're talking about, but we've never really had a word for it or a concept for it. And this is what True Mother's trying to bring in. And I suddenly thought of Father's autobiography. The first chapter of Father's autobiography is called What I Learned About Peace While Being Carried on My Father's Back. This is the last sentence of the first chapter. To heal a world where there is no hope, we need to go back to the pure hearts we had as children. We need to go back to the principles of peace and the breath of love that we learned while we were being carried on our father's backs. So this is Mojang that they were talking about. So Thomas Salover's conclusions. He said, if Mojang is the earliest connection feeling that we experience in life, then Hyojong would represent the increasing consciousness, filial connection feeling with a child experience in response to his or her parents. Hyojong is not only a vertical directed concept, but also includes horizontal expansion. In this way, Hyojong can represent an important insight for articulating the goal of a society based on shared common humanity. And then he also went on to quote Sun Jin Moon, if we are to achieve a lasting peace, and if we are to achieve one family under God, a world culture of heart, Hyojong, must be at its center. This is the supreme virtue to be cultivated within each of one of us. Hyojong includes the heart to live for the sake of others. I think that's very, very significant. So this is, when True Mother says Hyojong, she's really elevating filial piety into something much more, something much deeper, much broader, much warmer. It's a different concept. This next slide, I'm not going to go into. It's in the article. It's worth reading, but it explains how Hyojong is the heart of the concept of interdependence, mutual prosperity, and universal values that we often speak about at our sort of UPF meetings and things like that. So what does this mean for Family Pledge number 7? So I think we can reduce Family Pledge down. So instead of saying pledge is to live through living for the sake of others to perfect the world based on the culture of heart, which is rooted in the original lineage, by centering on true love, we can reduce that right down to pledges to perfect the world based on the culture of heart through Hyojong. Because Hyojong includes being rooted in the original lineage, being centered on true love, and living for the sake of others. So pledge number 7 is the Hyojong pledge. So when you say pledge number 7, you can think, that's what Hyojong means. Let's go back to True Father's quotation. Henceforth, only art will remain. People who cannot write love poems are failures. How am I doing for time, Chisiko? Oh, good. Almost finished. So the point is, when you love someone deeply, you want to express that love. Pure and simple. You want to express that love in some way. If you don't love someone deeply, then, I'm afraid you failed. We are meant to love deeply. So the feeling of hyojong that we've been talking about, you want to make people happy. You want, if they're sad, you want to comfort them. We should feel hyojong for our parents, and we should feel hyojong for our heavenly parent. Love poems are not just for husband and wife. This is from one of Father's prayers in 1958. Since you have called upon us today, please alleviate us, through us, the bitterness you have felt because no one has recited poetry for you. Please consult us about your internal situation, which you have not been able to share with anyone. Raise us to become people who can connect with all people and with heaven. Father, this is our sincere wish. So, Father understood that God, our heavenly parent, needed words of love. He needed expressions of love. Not, oh, Heavenly Father, please look after me. Heavenly Father, I want to read love poems to you. He understood that, he should comfort God's heart. God's heart is broken because no one loved him enough, or understood him enough, or did not reflect him enough in our lives. I remember there's another quote which I could have used, but I didn't, where Father's saying, sometimes I just sit and talk about all the great things that God has created. He said it's like a poem. Okay, this is the last slide now. This really explains what Father means. What kind of couple are the ideal husband and wife we speak about in the Unification Church? They are a married couple who can turn the highest art into reality. They are a couple who can turn the highest literature into reality. Before we come into contact with the highest level of art in the world, the highest and sweetest love shared by husband and wife has to be the best work of art in the world. It has to be the best work of literature and the real body of literature. So this is why Father says if you can't write love poems, you're a failure. You have to have the love that, when you create art, you're pouring your heart into it. If you're pouring your heart into a person, then everything becomes art. Everything is an expression of art. It doesn't matter if the poems you write are rubbish, you'll get better. But you have to express your heart to the one that you love. The other day, Chizuko and I were playing our ukuleles, and it wasn't particularly good. We weren't very professional, but everyone came up and said, "That was great, I loved it, you were so cute." Because we expressed our love, and it was just a nice moment. It doesn't matter how good you are at it, in a sense. Not everyone can be a fantastic poet but like Vanya says, everything we do can be hyojong. Every action can be an expression of love, an expression of, and become art. Our whole life should become art. When we clean the house, when we cook meals, when we do our work, whatever we do, we can turn it into a work of art if we have the right heart within us. Right, thank you. Let's pray. Our beloved Heavenly Parent, our true Mother has introduced to us a new word, hyojong. It will take some time to really understand it, but we have these feelings in our life. We have felt the love from our parents, and we feel love for our own children. We feel love for you. We feel love for true parents. We have longed for them. We want to understand that this heart needs to be developed. The heart to care for others, the heart to make everything a work of art in our love for you and our love for our true parents. Please guide us in all of this. I report this in my name, Nigel Barrett, Blessed Central Family. Our Jew.